Okay, picking back up on number 20. Describe the two programs which gave money to European nations after World War II. So one of those programs was known as the Truman Doctrine. The idea behind the Truman Doctrine is that the U.S. would give military supplies to countries who were fighting civil wars, and we give money to the side that was fighting against communism. So specifically, Greece and Turkey were two nations we supply with military goods, again, to fight against communism. The Marshall Plan had a similar goal, but a different tactic. The Marshall Plan referred to money given to many nations in Western Europe to help kind of rebuild and redevelop their economies after World War II. But similarly to the Truman Doctrine, the goal of the Marshall Plan was to help these countries not fall to communism. The idea is that countries who are doing better and who have strong economies and prosperous citizens would not fall to communism. So, how do these programs exemplify the U.S. policy of containment? So containment, like I said, refers to the policy of preventing the spread of communism. We want to contain it where it already is and not let it spread. Both the Truman Doctrine and the Marshall Plan were efforts to prevent the spread of communism. That's the goal of containment. 21. What was the U.S. response when the Soviet Union blockaded the city of Berlin in 1948? So Berlin was divided into a Western, more free and democratic half, and an Eastern Soviet half, but the city was deep within the Eastern kind of communist-controlled half of Germany. So the Soviets blockaded the Western part of Berlin in 1948. The United States didn't want to back down to Stalin's aggressiveness. What we did was we broke the blockade by basically sending planes in to drop supplies to the citizens of West Berlin. This was known as the Berlin Airlift. Eventually, after over a year of doing this, the Soviets backed down and lifted the blockade of West Berlin. 22. NATO, or the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, was created as an alliance of collective security. What does this mean? So the idea behind this is that all the member nations of NATO would come to the defense of other nations if they were attacked. Especially the United States was kind of the main guarantor of this collective security. The idea behind this is attack on one is an attack on all. It was a way to kind of prevent an attack from the Soviet Union. 23, how was containment related to the U.S. involvement in the Korean War? So North Korea, which was a communist country and backed by the Soviets, invaded South Korea, who was non-communist. The United States came to the aid of South Korea and fought the Korean War to kind of kick the North Koreans out of the South and prevent the whole Korean peninsula from falling to communism. And the U.S. was successful in achieving containment. So the North Koreans were repelled from the South. The U.S. eventually went into the North, was repelled back out of the North. But at the end of the war, that division or that line between the North and the South was maintained, and it still exists today. But the ultimate goal was met in that the South Korean nation did not fall to communism. 24, identify HUAC. HUAC stands for the House Un-American Activities Committee. This was a temporary committee in the House of Representatives that was designed to kind of investigate any accusations of suspected communist activity in the United States. 25, how were Senator Joseph McCarthy's actions similar to the first Red Scare in 1919? So, similar to the Red Scare in 1919, there was some threat of communist influence in the U.S., but McCarthy made all kinds of wild accusations with no evidence of people being spies for the Soviets or being secret communists. And again, there was no evidence behind his claims. He was eventually discredited, but it's similar in that there was a widespread fear of Soviet and communist influence in the United States. And finally, how did McCarthy's actions affect the civil liberties and due process of American citizens? So liberties were restricted. There was a lot of investigations of people without really any kind of good evidence. People were suspected of disloyalty and accused of being communist simply because of groups they had joined or things they had said. And overall, the civil rights and civil liberties and due process of Americans was restricted during McCarthyism.